Afternoon and welcome back to the live show. I'm Dr. Sean Pastuch. I'm one of your hosts, and this is...
my name's Larry.
Hi, my name's Larry.
Yeah.
He's the other host. So today we're going to be talking about breathwork, why it's important that you do it properly, how you can start to integrate it into programs with your clients if you have them. And I want to remind you that just because you can breathe doesn't mean that you're doing it the most effective, efficient, or valuable way for your own performance.
In fact, studies show that most people are doing it very poorly.
Which is crazy because to me it's one of those things that, like, how do we all survive with maladapted breathing if breathing is essential to everything that we do?
Well, there's a big difference between surviving and thriving, as we've talked about many times. And I think that a big part of the reason that people don't feel as good as they don't know that they can is because they don't breathe well.
Well, you know what's interesting to me is, and before I even get into all of this, please remember, like and subscribe to the show. If you like this, subscribe to the channel so that you get alerts when the show comes on. Follow us on Instagram at Larry the Human, at Dr. Sean Pastuch, Active Life Professional, Active Life RX. Just Google Active Life and follow everything that you see that's associated with it. I always find it interesting because as the founder and the CEO of Active Life, I'm constantly learning how to be a better human being. And I find that every time I become a better human and learn a thing that I then apply, our business improves, which is cool. And then I look at people who have these businesses that are mega successful, and I'm like, there's no way that everyone who is mega successful has gone through the personal development that I'm trying to go through to become a better human, which leads me to believe, where is the line between development and outcomes? Because I imagine every professional athlete, every Olympian does not have appropriate breathing mechanics either. You follow me?
I would agree.
So does that mean that I'm just that much more deficient than everybody else to begin with and I have that much more catching up to do?
Doesn't it just mean that you're elite?
Me?
Yeah.
Why?
It just sounded like you were describing a whole bunch of things that you were doing really well.
Well, yeah, but what I'm getting at is the company still isn't where I want it to go, right? I could get all the breath work down and not be an elite athlete at any level. And if there are elite athletes who have the breath work wrong, if there are CEOs who have the personal development wrong, I gotta be missing something. Maybe I'm working on the wrong spot.
Maybe.
It's interesting. You're a huge help.
Either way, I do think that what's been most fascinating about this whole topic is not only how it's changed the way I felt outside of the gym, inside of the gym, the way that I do conversations, the way that I regulate my thought, the way I regulate my emotion, the way I sleep, my average mood throughout the day. It's crazy. And what happens with clients is totally different. Not only in their experience working out, but also talking about what they're reporting on average in between workouts and everything around it. We're talking about, like you said, creating better people, which is fascinating.
The thing that I always find fascinating with breathwork, and Sean touched on this before we started. Sean, clearly not speaking third person here.
You should speak third person.
I would agree with that.
I didn't. I broke the third wall or fourth wall?
Fourth wall.
I broke the fourth wall. He's over there. Like when I have a stuffy nose, I go to breathwork. And it unstuffs my nose, which is totally counterintuitive, because why would you want to breathe through your nose when your nose is stuffed? Well, the body has this crazy way of adapting and saying, oh, that's what you want to do? I guess I'll clear the way for that to work. And it's one of those things that I have not prioritized in the way that I probably should. I think my speaking would be better if I worked on my breathwork more often. And it's hard to remember to do it, because you can live without it. It's just what piece of the pie are you missing by not doing it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this always comes down to the question of how much sweeter is the taste of better for you, the individual, and how worth it is it for you to do that thing?
It depends on the thing.
Sure.
It's circumstantial.
Sure. And I mean that in general. So another person on our staff behind the Active Life Professional Captain Nick, I've been out where he lives in Utah snowboarding him twice now. The first time, because of the elevation difference, I struggled to breathe walking from the lodge to the ski lift.
Really?
Which was 75 meters away.
What's the elevation?
Don't know. It's probably about a mile, give or take.
Okay.
And I stopped and I was breathing hard and heavy and intentionally. I went for a 75-meter walk. After realizing how much that sucked and how much it detracted from how much I could enjoy myself. I was tired. I was achy. I burned. It sucked. It was like when I was in the flow state of the moment and going down, I was distracted from it. But the rest of the time, I was just uncomfortable. It wasn't fun. The second time, for 5 weeks before, I did very, very intentional breath work 3 days a week before I went. And there was a significant difference in how much less distracted I was by my discomfort and how much more I was able to just have fun.
Well, do you think you were less distracted by your discomfort, or do you think that you had less discomfort because your body was more adapted to it?
Probably both.
Okay.
Probably both. I was probably desensitized to it, so I was less distracted by it. And I was also more tolerant to it, which was the intention, right?
Right. That's what I was asking. It's an interesting, it's like the hunger stuff that we talked about this morning. Like I've been fasting until the first meal I just ate was just now like 1:45, and that's actually earlier for what I've been doing as of late. And what I found was the reason I did it was actually because I used to have I don't want to say a bad relationship with food, because I don't look at food in a negative light. It was more like a bad relationship with discomfort of certain varieties. So if I got hungry, I allowed myself to default to like, I don't want to do anything, I just want to eat right now. Like, let's find food, and it became like, oh, the food's in charge. The hunger is in charge. And now it's like a 15 to 20 minute window where I'm uncomfortable, and I could either surrender to that, or I could be like, this is going to go away in 20 minutes.
Yep, and it does.
And then it does. And then for 6 hours, I'm like, I feel amazing.
I know, so much better.
Yeah.
Well, so what I learned from Dr. Lance on staff that was huge was that...
Who will be on in a moment, by the way.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Sick.
Amazing how you worked that in there.
This is all just a tolerance thing. And if we on average, as a species, are breathing too much and incorrectly, we have a low tolerance for the discomfort of having not enough of CO2 and oxygen and all those balances and this, that, and the other thing. And if we can desensitize ourselves to the discomfort of that, just like we can desensitize ourselves to hunger, we can do more with less, which is always better.
Yeah.
Always.
So we have a question from Brad Marshall here, which he's asking, did you learn about breathwork going through school? I find that you have to go find it on your own rather than through formal education. And go for it.
So my only formal education, Brad, was with Dr. Lance on our staff. Secondarily, it was through the book Breath by James Nestor. That changed everything for me. And then applying it with Dr. Lance's breathwork course was a huge game changer.
Yeah, and so my experience with breathwork starts going back with...
Sorry, Wim Hof was number one.
Okay. Starts with going back to Chris Hinshaw, talking to me about how to breathe for aerobic capacity through training and through competition. Followed by a Wim Hof seminar with, who was the host? I'm a terrible human being. Oh, that'll come to me right on time for the show to end. But I went to a Wim Hof seminar. It was extremely valuable. And then interviewed Dr. Belisa Vranic on the podcast. She talks about breathwork quite a bit. put me through some exercises, open my mind to some things, and then Lance actually being the person on our staff who is most expert at it, most researched in it, developed a course for people who take our education. So you don't have to seek out formal education from outside random sources and piece it all together yourself anymore. Dr. Lance, who's going to be on here in a moment, built a curriculum for our ALP students to actually go through and learn that breath work to control neurological state, bracing, apnea, CO2 tolerance, all of the things that you want to be able to do.
Changing blood pressure, changing mood, reducing people's fear of certain positions and exposure to certain movements, and improving their ability to get out of pain when the corrective protocols that they're already applying aren't necessarily doing the trick, which is just crazy.
Yeah. So Brad, stick around because Lance is going to be on momentarily. He's going to be talking about how we do what we do with breathwork. And Brad mentioned that he loved Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McKeown. I don't know if you read that book or not.
I haven't.
Me either. Are we ready to bring Lance in?
Should we?
I think we should.
Give me countdown.
Huh?
3, 2.
And Larry, go ahead and introduce Lance. Full name, please.
Dr. Lance Einerson.
Well done.
How are you today?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
Life's good.
Yeah. Can't complain.
All right, good talk.
So this is fun.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Perfectly
you.
well.
He's like, you
Okay.
are so
All right, there was a little bit of a delay there, wasn't there?
non-communicative
All right,
that I
cool.
need to know
We're
if you
good.
can hear me.
There still might be a lag, which is okay.
Is there a lag? Are we behind on you?
Yeah, it's cool though. I can hear you fine.
Great. Figure it out. You're a doctor.
I got it.
Lance, how did this all start for you?
I mean, if we are really talking about like how it started like very beginning, the big thing for me is that I was actually born deaf, right? So I was like 96% deaf or something like that when I was born. I had holes through my eardrums because I was born with an infection in my ears, and that ended up making me so I was wired for a very quiet world. And I got surgery and stuff later on, and so I have full normal hearing now. But what that created was really a nervous system that was not prepared to deal with outside stressors very well. And so my ability to regulate my emotions, my physical state was very, very poor. And that made life pretty difficult for me. You know, things that other people would find entertaining or exciting or things that they would want to go and participate in were just overwhelming for me. And it ended up leading to a lot of, just kind of like chronic illnesses. And breath work was an avenue or a way for me to find control or to create control within my own system so that I could also go and participate in those things that I wanted to do and live the life that I wanted to live. So that was a springboard for me.
I've heard you describe the nervous system as the master key to our experience. And I've also heard you talk about how after vision, meaning literally what we see, breath is the fastest way that we can directly access and change the state of our nervous system to directly change our experience. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So if we go back to vision, right? So if I'm walking out through the woods and I come upon a bear and, she's got her cubs there, what's going to happen is I'm going to take that information in visually and be like, oh, this is not good. I'm standing between mama bear and baby bear. We have a problem, right? So that's going to create changes in my physiology. The thing that happens right after that is my breathing is going to adjust to respond to that situation because I need resources. I need I'm going to need that oxygen and those type of things so that I can get out of that situation so that I can run away. But I'm also going to need to adjust hormonally. I'm going to need to liberate stores that are there for me to respond in kind, right? So that I can be in sync with my environment. And that's an extreme example, but the same thing happens throughout our, just normal everyday life. You don't have to run into a bear in the woods, right? So maybe I'm going to have a conversation with my boss. Maybe I'm going to have a conversation with, my significant other. And I know that it's going to be something that's difficult, my breathing is going to adjust accordingly, right? If I need to upregulate my nervous system so that I can respond to something that requires more arousal, I can do that by changing my breathing. I can get ahead of the curve so that it doesn't hit me in the middle of that conversation and I'm unable to respond emotionally and cognitively in the way that I need to respond. So it's not just the emergencies like the bear, it's everything. It's connection with kids, it's connection with family members, with clients, everything.
How old were you when you had the surgery to repair the ear?
Let's see. I believe I was about one-ish. I was about 1 year old. But I've been told the story about like the first time I heard a vacuum cleaner, and that like it basically just blew my mind in a very negative way. Like it just sent me off the rails, and I just freaked out, right? Like I hadn't ever heard anything, and then to hear something so harsh, like my nervous system was just through the roof. And so that was kind of my life as a young child.
Yeah. And when did you stumble onto breathwork to try to fix it? What I'm trying to get at there is, when you're 1 year old, you don't have the conscious awareness that you can change the way that your body responds to that stimulus. So I'm curious where you were in life when you realized, I may have control over this.
I can tell you that the first time I realized that it was a problem, that it was like very abnormal, I specifically remember going bowling when I was it was either 6th or 7th grade with some of my friends. And like, I was just drenched in sweat. Like I had like big, huge sweat rings in my armpits.
How are you bowling?
One of my friends was like making fun of me. And he was just like, that's ridiculous. Like, why are you so sweaty? We're bowling. Like, we're doing nothing. But there were people around, right? And so there was stimulation. And I was having a hard time dealing with it physically. And then breathwork came in, of where I very first started tinkering with it was when I was 15, 16 years old. And my brother, who has a little bit of martial arts background, he introduced me to box breathing and showed me like, hey, with this breathing and this visualization, you can have a change in your body so that the things that we do after this breathing and visualization, you're going to be able to integrate those things and to remember them better. Cool. And that was my first little foray of like, hey, I can change my body. I can change my nervous system. I have control. And here we are, 15, 16 years later.
And how have you built that into your coaching?
It's something that is often inserted without it being a huge focus, right? Because we're breathing all the time. It's like 24,000 times a day. I can't remember, something like that. And so we can integrate that little snippets of breathwork principles into everything that we do. So oftentimes it's, hey, we're going to be doing this exercise. We're going to be doing a high pull, and you've mentioned that you get pain when your elbow is just below your collarbone. So what I want you to do is we're going to start from the bottom. I want you to take a deep breath. And as you pull up to the top, you're going to slowly exhale as you come up into that barrier of where your symptoms are. And what that does is it just brings the nervous system down so that it's not feeling so threatened when it gets to that position. And then we can start to work through it. So very, very little things like that can go a long ways.
What's most interesting to me about what you just described was that when you're first learning how to train, it's kind of like inhale on the eccentric and exhale on the concentric, and that's it, right? It's like deep breath in is what I would have been doing. When I first took my training course, I was probably putting everybody I worked with into a disbalance of CO2 and O2, because it was just like, it might as well have been a breathing exercise every single time, right? And what you're describing is prioritizing the neurological component of the breath over the bracing component of the breath to elicit a response that we're looking for that is maybe not the same as what the bracing would do.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, it's all about context, right? Like, what do you want to happen?
Yeah, but
How are you going to use the breath to support that?
and that's what I'm saying is interesting, is the chain that you can use the breath in different ways to do different things. It's like when we talk about training for tendon health. You might not get bigger biceps training for tendon health this way, but you are going to have tendons that can withstand training for bigger biceps. And so going back to kind of the course that you built out, breath work, one of the reasons I never dove into breath work fully is it was overwhelming. It was like, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Where the heck do I start? When you started to design coursework for breathwork, where did you decide I'm going to begin here?
Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you are looking at ancient yoga practices or if you're looking at, cutting edge research, any of those things, like everything in between. Breathwork always boils down to 3 fundamental principles. It's mechanics, so the way that your body is actually moving with the breath. So that's, expansion of the rib cage, diaphragm moving, the way that the air actually comes into your body. So whether it's, orally or nasally, nasally, is that, yeah, whatever, oral, mouth or nose. And then we have the chemical balance of the blood. So that's the oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in the blood. And then we have the neurological state. So those are the 3 pillars that everything that happens in breathwork are based off of. So you can look back at, any sort of practice that you can find, and you can see that the effects come from changing one of those 3 variables. And then if we look at the modern research, those are the variables that we're able to actually track changes and things through. And so those 3 things are the foundation of the course. And so what we do is we go through and we break down like, hey, how do these things apply to training, whether it's for performance or helping people get out of pain? How can we manipulate these variables just like we would manipulate the variables of load or range of motion in, I guess you could say traditional training? So that we can accelerate progress and so that we can achieve the goal that we're looking for.
And the breathwork activity you take people through to start the seminar, not the breathwork seminar, because there isn't one, the movement seminar. Was that box breathing?
No.
Okay. Can you go into what that is, and can you talk? I would love for you and Lance to discuss kind of how you guys came up with that activity and the change that you've seen in the way that it affects people who take our seminar.
Sure. So you helped me build this out in a big way, and I communicated to you, this is the reason why you've been able to be so valuable is you have understood much better than the rest of us how you can use the breath in a million different ways depending on your intent. And I came to you with the intent that I had, and then you helped me apply the appropriate breath practice for it, which was so valuable. And the intent that I wanted to have is, hey, I want to energize people in a big way. I want to open up their entire physiology to be able to ingest information and ideas that I am about to give them. And then I want them to be able to very, very effectively digest it and integrate it so that they are 100% primed and they are 100% focused and carrying with them the focus of what they want to get out of this thing. And you walked me through 2 different kinds of breath I can use and alternate between during this opening practice, during which I am going to first give people a very, very sympathetic kind of breath where they're very actively and very aggressively pulling air in for 3 seconds and then very passively letting it out rather quickly. Rather quickly is the new word that I just made up today.
I like that word though. Quickly.
And
I don't see a
it
fast
basically
rate
means,
of uptake on that just because
it means a little faster than quickly.
That makes sense.
So it's
Yeah.
the second breath that they used was a very, very even, soft in, soft out. You're letting it fall in, you're letting it fall out. It's passive all around, and it's just slower, and it's a little more down regulatory than the other one, which is very up regulatory. And depending on what I wanted their nervous system to do and their focus and their intention and their body to do with respect to what I was giving them, we alternated those 2 different kinds of breath. One allows them to take in information and focus on it very energetically. The other one will allow them to ease in to something that they get to rest and digest as they move forward into the thing. And all of them end up feeling, I don't know about all of them, but many of them report to us that they feel focused and excited by the content they're about to learn and what they didn't even realize they could get out of it and the degree to which it will serve them in a way that they otherwise might not have had we not done that exercise.
Yeah, and Lance, I don't know if you know this. The first time that we ever used that was our first ProPath seminar. So we had about 40 people who were in a room, and Larry had them lay down and took them through the breath work with the lights off, with the visualization of a story that went with it. And when we were done, we're like, all right, everybody return to your seats. Let's get into the first lecture. There were people who had to stop crying. There were people who had to like totally collect themselves. And the lesson that we learned was that activity was so powerful that we need to install a break there. Even though it seems like, oh, everyone's laying down, they're not learning anything intentionally. We're not giving them information that they need to be able to remember. So we thought, go right from that, right into the first lecture. Bad idea. People were like, I'm not here right now.
Nope. One guy was like, I feel like I just got hit by a truck and I need to just come back from this.
Yeah, that was Jeremy, I think, right? Yeah. And you did the same thing or something similar with your client who came in one day, who was a little bit high energy, stressed out, you could tell. And instead of training him, you put him through a breathwork exercise. How does that work as a trainer? What is the, like, how does a coach or a trainer look at their client who's coming in to work out and be like, the most valuable thing for you today is going to be a breathwork activity?
Yeah, well, I shared this with the entire staff, and I'm happy to share it with everyone that's watching here today. I've been working with this client for 3.5, maybe almost 4 years, and I always have a plan for him. We're always 24 sessions out of what the next block of his training is going to be, and I know what the intention of the next 24 sessions is. And he came in on session, 8 of this block, and he walked in such a way that I realized nothing is going to go the way I want it to go today.
Right.
My plan doesn't matter today because I'm not going to be able to do any of it. And I realized that about 5-6 minutes into our session, and I threw the entire workout away. When I say that, I mean I just put it back on the shelf in a pocket for next workout maybe. And I lied him down on the floor, and for the remaining 45 minutes of our session together, all we did was focus on his breath. And that was 20 workouts ago, and he's had a paradigm shift in his life. He's on fewer medications since that workout.
That's crazy.
He's seeing his therapist half as frequently as he was before that workout. Everything about it is different. The way he's controlling himself. This is the guy who has not been able to breathe well or sleep because of it for the last 30 years. He was on a bike ride going to the gym the other day, and he started to feel short of breath. And instead of doing what he would normally do, which is stopping and hyperventilating and getting frustrated that he can't breathe and waiting for it to feel like he finally got a breath, he exhaled all his air and held his breath to just reset everything. And
That's
then
cool.
he just took a next super slow, gentle breath, and he was like, I felt like I was totally saturated with all the air that I need.
Well, that's the
relaxed.
value. That's the value of being a coach who gives that education to the client. So it's not like
That's the purpose of a session, right?
Yes, but not every coach does it that way. There's a lot of, I'm going to do this thing with you. Don't worry about how it works. Just you'll feel better after. So, Lance, when you're teaching the course to the ALPs, or the ALP candidates, do you address with them how often you think they should be doing this? How often people should work out nasally as compared to just working out without thinking about it?
Yeah, so what we talk about is we talk about how to apply and to stick with these fundamental principles, right? Because like I said, the way that you integrate this work, kind of like that example of a hypo, it's very often small tweaks to a program. You're like, hey, you know what? This is what we're doing. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to change the way your nervous system approaches this movement pattern or this type of situation, whatever the context is. And then they understand, they know, hey, this is actually a very important component of this session or this workout exercise. And it becomes a focus. And when they have that focus, that's where it opens up cognitively, like, hey, this thing really is important and it's going to change the way that I perform. And so when we help, or what we do with the ALP candidates is help them to understand, but that's what we're doing. we're shifting this paradigm, and what we're going to do in this course is to help you to understand how you need to apply this individually. Because for some people, it might be like, hey, this person, like they have a ton of back pain. They're very, like their symptoms are very irritable. They're not able to do much, but they can ride a bike, and they have a hard time dialing back in the gym because they have that need. They feel like they have that need to push themselves. So, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put you on some paced breathing exercises on the bike, and we're going to increase your CO2 tolerance, which is going to help with a bunch of other things. We're going to focus on your breathing mechanics, and that's going to help with your symptoms, but we're also going to give you work that feels very fulfilling for you while you're there, that's difficult. And contextually, that's exactly what that person needs. While some other person might need something very, very small of like, hey, I want you to breathe like this while you're doing this movement in the warm-up. And that's all that they need. So the big thing is that we teach those principles so that the coaches that attend this course, they're able to apply them contextually to a very broad spectrum of clients, whether they're there for performance or to get out of pain.
Very cool. We have 2 questions that came in. The first one is from Brad. Well, they're both from Brad. I'm going to ask them to you, Lance.
Okay.
Curious on your thoughts on being intentional with breath work to develop a natural nasal belly breath compared to the chest, mouth, and breathing folks most engage in.
Yeah. So, I mean, the nose is built for breathing, right? It actually has all of the plumbing. You know, that's where the most nitric oxide, which is a huge vasodilator, comes from, is the lining of the sinuses. That's where the air gets scrubbed. It gets to the correct humidity. It gets to the correct temperature so that your lungs and your airways are able to do their job. It's also significantly more efficient for oxygen utilization. There are times when you need to breathe through your mouth, like when you're talking, and when you're at very, very top and maximal exertion, I'm going to burn the house down because recovery is not important, you know, fourth quarter sort of situations, right? Other than that, we should be breathing through our nose, and it should be something that we pay attention to because it is important. It's essentially the very first lever and most easily accessed lever for us as coaches to pull to change the way that our clients are feeling, not just in the gym, but in their everyday lives.
Can I add something? When I go down a rabbit hole of just what you're talking about with nitric oxide and that's where it's created, if I understand correctly, when you exhale through your nose, you start to create nitric oxide, and the next inhale, you pull it in and you'll take it into your bloodstream, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's produced on both. It's just produced more abundantly on the exhale.
Got it. So
yes,
either way.
There's a cloud in there, and then it comes in. Yeah.
Think about cases like those that are suffered by diabetics, whereby their vasculature is not as healthy as it normally would be because their hormonal fluctuations are competing for nitric oxide and dampening nitric oxide absorption in their blood vessels. And the decreased amount of nitric oxide in their blood vessels is part of the reason why some of them have to get their toes amputated. Imagine how much something like this can just be another very simple layer that someone like this could add onto their lives to not only stave off, but potentially with the addition of a whole bunch of other habits, reverse their conditions.
20,000 plus times a day.
20,000 reps a day.
Absolutely. Any sort of vascular disease or has a vascular component to it can benefit from proper breathing. I mean, from type 1 or 2 diabetes to erectile dysfunction, right? Nitric oxide, it's a pretty good thing.
Never mind, we'll leave that question alone. Larry, this next question was for you. It was from Brad. How long have you seen this take to make the shift? I imagine he's talking about for your client who you did the breathwork with.
Brad, with that client, it was overnight. He just decided that he was going to do it. And it's been 14 weeks since he did that. And I think it's in the past couple that he's no longer taking his blood pressure medication.
I want to speak to the reason why I think that happened so that, Brad, you can get the same kind of results out of your clients if you're doing the same kind of thing. I've seen Larry coach his clients. And when he does it, it's not as simple as here, do this thing. It's here, do this thing. I'm going to explain to you the purpose of why we're doing it. I'm going to explain to you the process of how it's going to be done. I'm going to explain to you the benefit of doing it. Then you're going to do it. Now they have buy-in, so they're going to actually go ahead and do the thing Larry's asking them. Then after it's over, he will ask them how it felt, ask them what their thoughts are. When they've had a chance to express them and talk them through with them, the next thing he does is educate the client on how they can apply what they just learned to their life. He quizzes them. He makes sure that they have competency in the comprehension of the skill he just gave them. Without that, I don't think that the client has the overnight change.
I had no idea. That sounds great. Sounds like a really good session.
Yeah, you do a good job of that.
But I agree with you.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to not only empower your clients with the skills in the moment, but with the education on how to best access the skills when they need them. And so Lance, we were talking earlier, and Brad, if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to ask them. You did. That's awesome. I notice when I work with folks in educate practice, efficient breathing, it's a while and they're thinking about it and they go back to no longer be intentional. It's back to chest and mouth breathing. Brad, I would say that that's likely because you're not making it important enough for them. It needs to be more important from you to them, reinforced more often from you to them. If you treat it the same way that you would treat them moving a barbell the wrong way or a dumbbell the wrong way and correct it every time that you see it, they will understand the importance and they will start to change the way that they do it, if they trust you. Now, feel free to continue chiming in on that. Lance, we were talking earlier about the idea that you can do very high intensity training with nasal breathing only. And what I was discussing with Larry is, how do we express to people that you can train at high intensity without breathing through your mouth, while still acknowledging that sometimes in your training, it may be appropriate to breathe through your mouth? And
yeah, I mean,
I wanted to leave it to you. No, I want to leave it to you.
Yeah, so it's all about context, right? Like this goes back to that same idea, really, of the breathwork exercise before the ProPath seminar, is that like, hey, we're going to put you in a state that is conducive to success for your goal in the moment. For us, for our physiology, nasal breathing checks that box the vast majority of the time. It's just the factors that we talked about before. Is it going to be difficult for somebody who's not adapted to nasal breathing? Absolutely. I mean, we talk about load versus capacity all the time in our education, and it's no different with the tissues and the structures that are built into the nose, the sinuses, all of that, right? So it's going to take some time to adapt. But if that is something that we care about as coaches and that we can communicate the value of it to our clients, then that adaptation can be made. And it's as simple as that. It's all through adaptation. But again, all that we really have to do is communicate that this isn't the end all be all, right? Like nasal breathing, as powerful as it is, it's not a panacea. It doesn't solve every problem, and it's not the perfect tool for every situation.
Well, I'm not gonna do it.
If you're in that fourth quarter situation and you need to get, the ball, across the line, or you're in that last, 40 meters of whatever, run that you're doing, and you have to turn on the afterburners, doing that through your mouth so that you can dump enough carbon dioxide to, bump that flame up. That's totally fine. It's our job as coaches to communicate the actual spectrum of possibility and importance of nasal breathing, of when to use it and when not to use it. And that spectrum is significantly broader in terms of performance than most people think, because they spend a lot of time breathing out of their mouths.
I just had a mind blow, and I'm going to share it. So,
And then take them into the gym.
So oxygen fuels a fire. Carbon dioxide extinguishes it. If you think about dry ice, it's literally just it's sublimated, right? Is that the same? It's going both directions like that? Whatever. It's literally solid CO2. If you put the gas that comes off of dry ice onto a flame, it'll instantly extinguish it. When you talk about blowing all the CO2 off, you're literally creating an environment in which you can create more combustion. And if you just think about energy output and power output, that's what's happening. And ready to get moving in the gym?
I don't know if that's true.
What do you say?
You're on the right track for sure.
All right.
That's a no.
Close enough.
That's a no.
I'm in the rail yard. Fair?
No, man, you're on the right track, because CO2 is going to slow those things down if you have too much of it. We need it to get the oxygen there so it can be burned. But if we dump it all off, then we're not going to be able to get oxygen back in quickly enough to recover. And so that's the whole thing of fourth quarter, because the game's over and we can be done. It doesn't matter if we need to recover in the next few minutes.
I just want to simplify
It's
what
all
Lance just
about
said.
boom, let's go, let's get it done.
What Lance just said was that you're on the right track. You're just not on the train.
Right.
Right. Let's take him into the gym.
Well, the visual still works.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So what's gonna happen now is we're gonna take you guys into the gym, and we're gonna throw Dr. Lance under the bus and have him walk us through a couple of ways that you guys can immediately start applying breath work, so that you and clients can start experiencing some really awesome changes.
Yeah.
So-
We'll see if this works.
So why don't we do this? Because Bradley asked a question, or Brad asked a question. Are there any tests that you use to baseline a client and then show improvement over time? So perhaps we can take one of those tests that you would use to baseline a client with Larry, and then we can talk about how we would show improvement with it over time.
So a couple of things that I think would be valuable to show everyone, Lance, are that baseline test, maybe talking about some basic mechanics, and then maybe showing a couple different opportunities for apnea or just CO2 tolerance.
And if this works.
Work for that. Yep.
And if it
Perfect.
works.
Cool.
Switch into this camera. All right. Can you hear him and see him still?
Dr. Lance, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't see you.
Great.
You're off.
You'll see me
there,
soon enough.
there we
You're
are.
not missing anything. I'm standing around awkwardly.
Tripod. I just can't hear you guys,
Okay.
so you gotta direct me.
All right, Dr. Lance, tell me what to do.
All right. So first of all, the things that we look for that are they're very visual cues, things that we can measure fairly easily, are mechanics and CO2 tolerance. So first of all, for mechanics, let's have you just lay down on your back with your feet flat
Okay.
on the floor and your knees bent.
Laying down on my back. What do you want me to do with my legs? This good?
Yep, that's good. And then Sean, can you hear me? Are you still there?
I can hear you.
Okay. Go over to Larry and let's get your hands down by his lower ribs.
Okay, I'm gonna come on to, I'll do it in a second. Like this?
Okay, so let's go lower ribs. So hands. So if this was Larry's rib cage, you're going to be pushing just a little bit on his bottom ribs, like bottom 2 ribs or so.
Got it.
There we go. Okay. And now, Larry, what I want you to do is I want you to inhale and push against Sean's hands. So Sean, just apply a little bit of pressure there. So inhale and expand that bottom portion of your rib cage, Larry.
That's pretty good.
And then exhale. Okay, apply a little bit more pressure, Sean. And then same thing, Larry, inhale, push against the ribs. There we go. So what we would be looking for here is that we get that lateral expansion or circumferential expansion of the lower ribs. Because what that is that is essentially the frame of the diaphragm. And if you think of this in terms of like an umbrella or a parachute, and those bottom ribs open up the diaphragm so that it has a larger surface area and it can pull in more air while not having to do as much work. So we essentially create a stable foundation for the diaphragm. Most people have very little movement at their lower ribs. You will put your hands on there and just put a little bit of pressure at their bottom ribs, and their breath will shift up into their chest and their neck. So Larry, can you show them what that looks like? To have a
This is a
breath
good
go
angle.
up into, yeah, it's okay, up into the chest and neck. A little excessive, but yeah, that's the idea, right? You put a little bit of pressure on their lower ribs, and they're not going to be able to push against it. They're not even really going to realize that that's where the most movement of their breath should be happening, and all the movement shifts up to the top of the rib cage, which pushes them into a sympathetic or kind of like a fight or flight state unnecessarily. So those lower ribs moving in that circumferential expansion sort of a movement, that is a very easy to track metric as a coach of like, hey, you know what? You had zero movement here when we went over these breathing exercises last week. You stayed on top of it, you did what you were supposed to do. And now when you breathe, you're getting good movement here. That means you're going to be utilizing your lungs the way that they're designed to be used, as well as your diaphragm. Okay, so that one's very, very easy to implement. Okay, in terms of how you can progress this to help people is you can just start them in this position, right? You could also move them into a bridge, just a hip bridge, so they just lift up their hips from there, and they can work on drilling those same mechanics and eventually moving them up into a vertical position, whether that's on a bike, whether they're standing, whether they're running, kneeling down like Larry is here. Any of those things are going to help in terms of improving their mechanics if they're able to maintain that circumferential expansion regardless of the position of their body. Anything you want to add to that, Larry?
No, I think that's great. What are some ways that we can start to program breath for people to build their CO2 tolerance and start to develop higher and higher levels of performance through their nose?
Okay, perfect. All right, so the foundation of good breathing mechanics isn't just breathing down, to the bottom of your rib cage using your diaphragm a ton. It's also using your nose, but doing so puts a lot more CO2 in the system, and you have to be able to tolerate that. One of my favorite drills for improving CO2 tolerance, because it's very simple, is to do paced breathing. You can do it on a bike, you can do it on a rower, you can do it running, anything that you have access to be consistently moving your body and you have a clock that you can watch. Okay, so what Larry would do here is he would go for the set amount of time, usually start between like 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how conditioned the person is. And the goal is for him to be able to go as hard as he can for that time, but only taking one breath every 5 seconds. So the inhale and the exhale in 5 seconds. You can break that up however you want across the 5 seconds. You can inhale for half of it, exhale for half of it, inhale quickly, exhale slowly. It doesn't matter as long as you keep that 5-second cadence. What you're doing here is you are disrupting the natural rhythm of your breathing enough that your CO2, or your carbon dioxide, is going to elevate in your bloodstream, and you're improving your tolerance to the substance. And when we're talking in terms of load versus capacity, like we do so much in all of our education, we're increasing our capacity by progressively increasing the load in our workouts.
So what's happening here is that you'll put someone on a little bike ride, might be 3 to 5 minutes, depending on their conditioning, and instead of just letting them breathe as fast and as frequently as they want, you'll create a construct that says, I only want you to allow one full inhalation, one full exhalation to occur every 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And you can change that time, you can change the intervals, you can play around with all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing is that you can change the context of what you're doing here too, because if we're talking about somebody that you're working with that just wants performance, right? Like let's say that their mental game is on point, like they're just crushing it, but their breathing's off a little bit. So we need some CO2 tolerance. You can throw this in just in their workout as a portion of their workout, just straight up physiology, nothing else. This is going to help. If you have a client who, is very, like stressed, kind of like neurotic, that kind of thing, that they're having a hard time dealing and coping with their state, they're not able to regulate themselves very well, this is a good option as well. But you have to build the construct on the front end before you get them on the bike. Okay, this is what we're doing. This is what it's going to feel like. You're going to have some air hunger. It's going to probably make you feel a little bit panicky. Okay, but what I want you to do is keep this cadence, even if that means you're moving extremely slow, and you're going to pay attention to the sensations that you experience in your body. I want you to think about how you also experience those sensations when you are feeling stressed and you're having a hard time in your life outside of the gym. And we're going to talk about how those two are connected and then why it's important for you to be able to regulate yourself in such a way that you can use these tools that are built into your body to not only improve your performance, but also to improve the way that you feel cognitively and emotionally so that you can deal with big deals in, big problems in your life.
Well, what you're highlighting now is something that Sean alluded to before with respect to Brad's question, which was that in all of these tools that you guys decide to explore, it's important that you can explain to your clients, here's why we're doing it. This is the payoff for you. And if you can start to communicate very, very clearly, this is what you can expect to find with respect to goals that you've already outlined are important to me, it's going to be much easier for people to buy into it and do the hell out of it with the same kind of vigor that they do all the things that they are already bought into.
Absolutely. 100%.
Lance, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Love it.
All right. I can take this thing out of my ear now, right?
No, you want it to go all the way up in there.
That's not kind. You can take yours out too.
I like feeling like a Secret Service
I
agent, so I'm
understand.
leaving it in.
Hot take time. First of all, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. Remember, subscribe to the channel, Google Active Life. If there's a follow button on the links that you find, push it. Brad's question, when coaching an elite athlete during a Metcon, is it better to sync the movement to the breathing pattern that allows them to continue moving consistently or increase the breathing rate to match the move? We just lost Lance.
Can you ask that again?
He's still there.
Just read it again.
Lance is still there? So he said, when coaching an athlete during a Metcon, is it better to sync the movement to the breathing pattern that allows them to continue moving consistently, or increase the breathing rate to match the move?
Can we get Lance? Because I would love to know.
This is where hey, could you do me a favor and read that again? And then Larry goes back and checks something on his phone or something, and then goes to read it himself instead of just listening to it.
So,
Yeah,
So,
that was
Lance,
good.
did you hear the question?
Can you hear me?
You Lance
Am I-
is muted at
am I on?
And he heard the question. Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, I heard it. You're good. I was just about to push exit, so that was good timing. Yeah, so it depends on the goal of the training, right? So are you training or are you competing? Are you testing or are you just doing a normal workout, right? So and it depends on the movement too, right? So we're not going to be telling somebody like, hey, every time you do a squat, you're going to take a breath, because we're going to sync the rhythm, right? And we're not going to have you hyperventilate while you're doing Murph or something like that. That's not going to work, obviously. And so what we have to ask is what is the goal, right? So if I'm trying to specifically build my capacity to be able to handle more work while I am nasal breathing, you're going to change your rate of work so that you can sustain that breathing pattern, if you will, right? If that person, you take that same person and they're doing the same workout, but it's in a competition, what you're going to do is you're going to know on the front end, hey, this person did this workout before or something very similar, and they were able to maintain nasal breathing. They were able to recover between rounds, everything really well, up until, I don't know, halfway through the last round, something like that. What we're going to do is we're going to try and match that pace, but when it gets time to where this person needs to finish and turn on the afterburners, we don't care about the breathing so much anymore. What we care about is winning the thing, right? So is it training or is it competition? Is it adaptation or is it completion? It completely depends on the context of what that person is experiencing.
I have a follow-up question for you,
sense?
Lance.
Yeah.
Are you wearing a name tag?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I donated blood today. So go do that. That's my plug. Go donate blood, because there's a big shortage right now.
All right. Lance.
You can hear again?
Huh? Yeah, you can push exit.
Yeah, exit that computer as fast as
Thank you.
I'm out of here.
Later, guys.
All right. Brad, I hope that was helpful for you, because we're letting Lance go. Let's get to hot takes. What do you got today, Cleary?
CrossFit charging athletes 4 times to compete. Last chance qualifier, another $50.
Yeah, if I don't know how it works in the PGA or the USTA. My answer to that question would be whatever that is, CrossFit should just copy it. So if they're charging the tennis players to compete at the US Open, then CrossFit should charge the CrossFitters to compete at semifinals in the games. If they're charging athletes to compete in the qualifiers for those events, then CrossFit should do the same thing. The formula, in my mind, exists. There's no need to rewrite it. I think that when you start to rewrite a formula that already works in a way that isn't the formula, it ends up not working. So my answer is, I don't know what those things do, but let's do that. Do you know what they do?
No idea.
Good question, Claire. Good question.
Let's see. Let's Google it.
What's our next one?
Do tennis players pay to compete in the U.S. Open?
Compete is the word.
Yeah, I wrote compete.
What was the other one? Quickly? Quickly.
There's been a couple really good
It's
ones
quickly.
today.
That's what it was.
We just bring up all the
So top tennis players do not, according to Google, this is from
always right.
mytennishq.com, top tennis players, I don't know how they define top, but do not need to pay to enter tournaments. They must, however, pay yearly fees to the respectable governing tennis bodies to be able to sign up for tournaments. However, lower ranked players must pay a $40 entry fee when competing in ITF future events. I don't know what a futures event is, but it sounds like that's not professional. So I think the answer to this is effectively, if CrossFit was going to follow that, they would charge everybody to compete in the Open, and they would not charge people who advanced. That's my hot take on that information.
Breaking news right now today. CrossFit launching the CrossFit coaching program.
Yeah, CrossFit launched a CrossFit coaching program, which is basically affiliate programming for any gym who wants to get lesson plans, workouts, all that kind of stuff. What is my thought on that? I think it's brilliant. I think CrossFit should have done this a long time ago. And I think that the reason why it's necessary, unfortunately, is because most people who are working in CrossFit gyms don't know how to do it. I think that the better solution than putting that out long term is to ensure that anybody who you allow to carry your name understands how to design a program that matches the intention of your name. I think that in the short term, providing them with an outlet to be able to do that is a great idea. And I saw people complaining that they're charging for it. Get over it. The affiliate fee that you pay, of course they should be charging for it. The affiliate fee that you pay to be an affiliate of CrossFit, if you were a CrossFit owner, is $3,000 on the high end. That is not a legitimate financial model for CrossFit. You need to understand that's not a legitimate financial model for CrossFit. There's a reason why if you want to open a CrossFit gym, it's $3,000 plus used equipment if you want to buy that, plus your space, which is oftentimes a back alley warehouse. If you want to open an Orange Theory, it could cost you in excess of $1 million to open up. What you're paying to be a CrossFit gym does not include the things that you want from a mentorship, from a guidance, from a support perspective. That's why it costs $3,000. They wanted to make it easy for you to start. Please stop complaining that they're charging you for guidance that you did not buy when you signed up. And they're not making it they're not making it mandatory. You don't have to pay.
And they're also not charging until December.
Well, they're also not taking everybody who wants it until December. But the point I'm making is they're not forcing you to get their program design. If you want an additional feature from the company, it's reasonable for you to pay for it. They're paying somebody to design it.
Following up on that, especially our paranoia specialist, Larry, we talked about F45 in here on Thursday in front of everyone.
Did we?
Yeah, we talked about F45.
Why did we do that?
I don't recall that at all.
I asked,
Paranoia
do you
specialist.
own an F45? Are you like a franchise? Targeted ad on my phone Saturday. Do you want to own an F45? How did that happen?
It's pretty simple.
It's not what you think it is.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
Okay.
What do you think it is?
What do you think it is?
No, you just tell us what it is.
What do you think it is?
It's already not that, so why don't you just tell us the thing?
Okay. So I think that what happened was you asked that question in the room. Somebody who was in the room in proximity to your phone Googled owning an F45 at some point throughout that day. You've already promised through accepting cookies from all these different websites that they can track who you've been around and what they've been searching. And so you were around somebody who searched F45, and so an ad was served to you about F45.
Are you suggesting
How do they know?
Brother's not hacking my phone and open my microphone?
Yes.
How do they know who's next to him and all that? How does that work?
We're all in the same place.
Their cell phones are constantly tracking our location.
Right. So we're all in the same building. So if it could be that back there, someone was like, what's F45? And they looked up F45, and they were close enough to Sean that now it's going to hit Sean's phone because he was in the room with the person who looked up
I didn't know
F45.
advertisements work like that.
Yep.
Nah, I think they're just listening to what we're saying.
Hacking.
Well, I mean, you're official now, so.
Yeah. I'll have a talk with them about it.
Yeah. That's all I got today.
Yeah, you have nothing else.
Well, you haven't given us another hot take.
I just gave you 3 to work with.
But you didn't give us
we just knocked them out of
they
the park.
And they weren't really fun. They were very serious hot takes.
I'm in a very polite mood today. I don't have anything to ask.
This is Sean's polite.
This is,
Hey, I did the thing you wanted to do. I got Lance in there.
And then complained about it.
I didn't complain about
You
it.
definitely
both
complained
ends.
about it.
On both ends.
I didn't complain.
The high pitch-
Anybody who can hear that sound on the other side of this on the other side of this thing, like, I mean, feel free to comment, people, if you're hearing like someone who is complaining tell you that they're not complaining. That's what the
If
pitch.
you detect a tone that reeks of defensiveness, please enter a Y right now.
Okay, last hot take.
Or write nothing, and that'll indicate the same
Let's
thing to us.
imagine we have 3 pods of the most delicious nectar of the gods pizza on earth with a lot of leftovers. Do you A, say, throw it away? Do you B, say, I don't even want to take it home? Or do you C, say, ugh?
There would be a D. I would only take it home if I was in dire need of pizza, because I would never heat pizza up in a microwave. Only a amateur does that.
You don't have you don't have an oven in your home.
I said I wouldn't heat it up here because we don't have an oven here. And by the way, amateurs heat it up in the oven too.
Toaster all day.
No, amateur move. It's just a small
We
oven.
put on the grill and tinfoil.
Stove. You take a nice big pan. You drop your pizza on the pan. It crisps up the bottom. It melts the cheese. It's a beautiful thing.
No.
Yes.
Not
talk
happening.
this through because it seems like we finally got somewhere. Maybe we need some context.
If you're going to reheat pizza, the proper way to reheat pizza is number 1, take the pineapple off.
The crust
It's
doesn't
immediate
need any more
pineapple.
crusting.
It does. It does.
It needs to be recrusted.
It just
hold
needs
on,
to be
excuse me.
dried
No,
up and
no, no.
heated a little bit.
If you reheat pizza after it being refrigerated in a microwave, for
Without the
example.
drying aspect of the reheating, it will turn out like crap.
Right.
Oven and toaster oven, dry it while you reheat it.
No, the issue is that you're getting steam effect because you have it on top of something which does not heat up at the rate that the pizza heats up at.
Okay.
So getting a pan nice and hot and then dropping your pizza right on top of the pan does everything you're looking for it to do.
Yeah, the issue with your
What
description
about the
here.
convection on top?
With
What?
There's no heating coming from the top down.
The way heat works is it goes through things that conduct it, so the top gets warm enough.
There's no hot air. There's no bubble of hot air melting that cheese from the top, baby.
The cheese is melted.
Baby, you gotta get heat
Oh
on the side.
Let's do the thing.
Turn pro.
No, subscribe too.
Subscribe.
Oh, subscribe.
Like,
That's
subscribe,
good.
buy a pizza without pineapple, put it in the refrigerator, and the next day take 3 slices. Put one in the microwave, 4 slices. One in the microwave, eat one cold, throw one in your oven. What are the instructions in the oven? Exactly.
455
And take the 4th one, heat your pan up to a moderately high heat, like a medium to high. Let it sit there for 2 minutes, drop your pizza on top, and eat it 2 minutes later. That's the way it's done. Turn pro.